Gracias. Bonjour. So I will do it in English. Sorry, my English is not perfect, so I hope the translator will be able to translate easier. So my name is Hubert Laferrière. I would like to point out I'm the former director, so I'm retired now. I'm old, so I'm retired, but I did work for government. And I just have to be very clear for the audience here. I do not represent the government of Canada, which is very important to consider. So any position or assumptions I'm making or observation are not official positions. So today I'm here to tell you about a story that we had in a department uh, of immigration concerning using the AI technology to solve a problem. And it was not obvious at the outset. The unit I was managing at that time was not very big. It was about 4 people. We were trying to say, like God, to say that we have a good technology and let's use it, help you, but it was not very popular, or people were not concerned by that, or they were not aware of that. So there was a lot of work to be done. Anyway, there was a situation in the department was that was very important for the executive committee and the minister. The service quality was degrading all the time, and there was a lot of factors contributing to that. One of the most important factors was the growth of the demand, and the growth of demand was very important. It was very high. If you look at the graph here, you see ongoing growth, and I don't have the years before 2013, but 5 years before it was half of 2 million, less than 1 million demand per year, application per year for that business line. And when we forecast it, we said we can jump from in 2018 from close to 3, 4 million to close to 6 million after that. In 2019, we have indeed the 4 million mark achieved. Now, with today, the business is slowing down, but the work we have done is still resuming. Anyway, so that was the first element. The other element, as I mentioned about the quality of service, not good at all. With the increased demand for services, increased demand for application, quality was very let's, for example, if the turnaround time for service was 10 days, now 40 days. And so an impact on overall quality, on the integrity of the program. Also, as you may imagine, over time, try to have more space to work, more a larger footprint than before. So there was pressure on the overall capacity of the organization to be able to provide good quality service and deal with the ongoing growth at a relatively low cost. So that was the business problem. And obviously, that was the thing. So there was a sense of urgency from the department, especially with the executive committee. They were seeking for innovation to transform the service we deliver, and they were expecting an immediate solution with rapid implementation. So they created a fund, an innovation fund for the department. My team, we made a proposal to the committee, and the proposal was the following: we proposed to use AI technology, advanced analytics and machine learning technology, to automate a portion. We focus on the online application, which is about 10% of the total volume, and we want to augment decision making. And this is very important here to underline the word augmenting decision making and making the decision. We trained the model over 200,000 decision in the past, or negative, and to be able to track down specific factors that come up with decision making. Then we use the model, the machine, to do automatic triage, or to triage the application, and we recommend the one that will be approved. And this is very important. There's no final decision made by the machine at this point in time, and it's at this point in time we recommend to do that. And at the same time, with the non-compliant we receive, we're supposed to be we're able to adjust the model all the time, which is very important to adapt the model to the changing environment. So proposal was made, and the executive committee granted the project, and we proposed to do a pilot. And what is very peculiar to this project, we proposed a live pilot. We have tested in the past in the silent mode, the model, it was working well. Now we need something tangible. And since there was a sense of urgency, we proposed a live pilot for 2 years. So we had a decision from the committee in summer 2017. We organized the team and created a lab in fall 2017. And we have a live pilot that started in 2018. And over a year later, we're ready to transfer, to transit to what we call production mode to a steady state environment by winter 2019. We completed an assessment of the benefits, and the pilot ended in bracket in March 2020. I was retiring in May, April, May, so the pilot is still ongoing. But again, the demand now is a bit slowed down because of the pandemic. So the idea is still working on, and my ex-colleagues are still working on other model to support business lines elsewhere within the department. Let me give you some elements here. What you see here, it's a high-level process of the application that we received. I show you 5 phases here. The fifth one, which is we provide the decision to the applicant. For instance, for an example, the passport. So the passport. So the first thing we see here is the intake. And as I told you, we take the e-application intake. Then what we do essentially is we assess the application to determine whether or not we can use this application for an automated triage with the model. If it's no, it's reviewed by an officer. If it's yes, we do the model, and the model distribute according to complexity level of the application and related risk in 3 bins: the low complexity, the medium capacity, and the medium complexity and the high complexity. If you notice, the low complexity, it's bulk approved by an officer. So the officer look at the results of the model, and instead of reviewing each file, you will see about on the screen about 50 to 75 application, and he undertook a cursory review of the files to approve. This is not automated approval. There's still a human in control of that, but again, this is something we have done. And when you come to medium and high complexity, we give that directly to an officer for review. Finally, you got the final decision. So that's the process. So what happened when we implemented the model? Let me give you some numbers here. What we received overall for April 2018 to November 2020, close to 450,000 applications, and 60% of them were treated by the machine learning model. And ultimately, you see distribution among the bins for the year. And here you see 15% were sent for bulk approval. Now, this is aggregated results. We have what we call sub-business line underneath that. For one of them, the tier 1 was 35 to 40%. Very, very important there. So different contexts, different factors came into play about distribution, but what you see there is the numbers, and we're very satisfied with that because it has indeed have a lot of benefits. I'll show you the following. So I forgot to tell you, yes, you see the green spots here. This is the positive decision that came from each tier. So obviously, tier 1, 99% were positive decision. Tier 2, which more complex than 1, 68% of decision, and tier 3, 24% of. One thing I'd like to tell you, we have also a controlled quality check. So what we do, we take a sample of the distributed decision done by the automated triage, and we re-insert the application in the model and submit that to an officer who doesn't know that was treated by the model. And the concordance between the result of the machine versus the one by the officer is 99%. I will say listening to my colleagues, my data science colleague, it's 99.6%. So we are confident that this is working well. And people in the business lines also, the officer were confident of that tool also. So which is now I'll give you some key results. But what you see here essentially is we time before and after the implementation of a model, the time it took to treat a portion of the bin. So before there was a low risk bin versus a high risk bin. Today we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, which is low to higher complexity, including risk. And what you see here when you compare the gray part from the blue part, you see a very, I think, impressive reduction of time. It's 8 times faster. We're very stunned by that, but obviously, and stunned, but we were expecting that, but we're happy to see that result. At the same time, when you go with higher complexity application, you see here a reduction in time. And this is very, very important because it has an impact on the way officer work. So the bottom line here, just if you look at optimization on the speed, on the processing time, but it has other impact. So if we have time savings, means for us at that time was lower cost per file and ultimately potentially faster service delivery because we'll have an impact on that. So we were on the right path, right, to achieve or to resolve the problem that we at the beginning. I want to show you something else here. This is the general results. We saw a major switch of focus on the work. If you look at the top of the graphic, the gray bars, we'll see here essentially clerical tasks where most of the time were spent by staff and officer on clerical tasks at 65%. The decision tasks were just 35%. And I have to be quite frank, everybody was not normal and we're not efficient here, manually speaking. Now, when we put the model in place, there's a switch. Now that the decision task is at 62%. We love that. And this is very, in fact, the model we use was very good to perform what we call clerical analysis staff, allowing ultimately high skill analytics officer to do deeper investigation on an application that able to enhance decision making. Also create savings in decision making because less time and less error. Ultimately, in addition to the time reduction, in addition to saving money, in addition to making a simpler process here, we also enhance integrity of the program. It was not a specific objective, but we have that in mind, and it was able to do it. So we were very happy with that. Now, this is done based on the forecast, and this is a graphic that show you here essentially the difference in terms of what kind of cost saving we should anticipate. If you look at the red line, it's before the implementation of the model. So it's following the growth in time, but going high. If you look at the green line, which is more related to the performance of the model regarding the cost, it's lower. And if you look at the gray, the gray zone, the shadow zone, you see the cumulative saving. So 10% of the volume of the overall business line, we were estimating that we're able to do over a 10-year, 4 million cumulative savings. So if you apply that to the whole business line, and if you apply to 4 million, now you can imagine all the costs we can save here. We're just talking one business line, like that to other business line. And let's say that the executive committee was very impressed by the impact of that. So that was the effort we put in place to make sure that we can optimize some processes. the same time, it helped us to revise our method, our processes, to standardize more the processes, see what we can do better, and probably review the way we deliver service at the same time. So a lot of a lot of inquiry. There was a group that's working on transformation, more drastic transformation of the service. So because of that, now the people were encouraged that we can move on to provide a better service at a lower cost. By the way, also at that time, because it was the road, there was no impact on job. There was no anticipated job losses. Change process with some fast, no anticipated job losses. So we're very satisfied. I demonstrated that technology works. Was one of the major goals for us to go to the department, but also to the management. The result exceeded the expectation. The business problem was, and the conclusion said, let's use technology for the business line to resume optimization with the rest of the organization. We should be happy. There is a but. We should be happy, but. And I didn't tell you the other part of the story. I told you the nice 61, if I can use that terminology, how it worked well. The, everything was working accordingly to what we were planned. However, and I say however, not because it's a bad thing, there was something else there. And one thing is when we established the lab in fall and start to plan for the project, about 2 days later, I was starting, I got the visit from lawyers, legal people, and from people for privacy. And the concern legal people have is whether or not we have the legal framework to do what we have to do. And I said, I don't understand. I'm just doing the same thing as an officer. Okay. Finding here because I know what it meant, but at the same time, I was trying to understand what is the point of view and the concern that the lawyers had whether or not we provide the service in the same fashion that was provided with with human beings, with officers. That was the question. We have the legal framework to do what we have to do. With privacy, it's more about the data issue, as you point out, the use of the data. In Canada, but in principle, I think it's in the world, when you provide information, personal information for an application, for a program, uh, most organizations ensure that this serves that purpose for nothing else. That was the concern also. So that's was uh, the question here. And ultimately, sorry for that, I got a message, but I have to remove that. So, but so that was the two groups. More and more we're moving forward in the project. We end up dealing with all these people. And just summary, the bottom part of that is people with IT people. And the IT people here, it's a curious beast for people using AI like we do. Yes, they welcome the technology. At that time, they were not prepared to use the technology because everything was different the way we were working. We're not operating in the same fashion that they do. It was very interesting to see that. We had third-party reviewers to check whether or not, independent reviewers to check whether or not we had a good model there. We had to do with data governance, and data governance is fundamental here. It's related to privacy, but also with legal. We have to look at internal communication to talk to people inside the department. We have to work with our human resources component to look at the impact on the jobs. We have to put in place a change management strategy. We have to work with our policy people because we want to be sure that we abide by policy and directive of the government. We dealt with academia to have expertise on certain points. Ultimately, we have a public communication approach. So that's a big thing here. And I will say that the technology we develop, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg, it's just the bottom of the iceberg. It's a lot of work. And this is, you cannot go through a project without dealing with that. So if I want to summarize the elements here, oh, I forgot, yes. I should not forget about that. The perception of the public about the use of AI, a lot of fears, but a lot of concerns. And if you look at some of the Guardian here, you know, violate human rights, or and bias. So you hear that a lot of time, or again, using the AI facial recognition was a privacy concern. So these coming from outside, and we are government, so we cannot forget about it. We have to deal with that. It's our job. So also, and also, if you look at the Berkman Klein Center from Harvard University, they have done a wild survey of principles or declaration by different parts of civil society, private sector, or government. And you see there's a lot of declaration there, like, for instance, Toronto Declaration or OECD AI principles. And the concern is more about ethics. It's about the privacy, obviously, the accountability, who's accountable with that. What about the transparency and explainability of the model? How do you explain you arrive to a decision with the model? So we have to explain that. And the lawyers will insist that you're able to demonstrate judge, for instance, if you go in an appeal process, to show how the machine was able to reach that. In our case, for those who are familiar with AI, we use a very simple algorithm called a classification algorithm. It's called the C5. It's a well-known algorithm, not very complicated. We haven't used neural network for this. The performance of the tree decision algorithm was good for us. And it helped us also to be able to show to anybody who wants to know how the machine reached a decision, or the path the machine took. So be good. So we're happy about the situation. But this is an example of what you have to take into account. So ultimately, this is what we have now. So I end up managing a lot of things. So first of all, I was imposed because it was a project for the department, use a project management framework, probably less more risk and issues than planning. That was a concern. We have now, it's not a new discipline, data science, but the way it was done with the AI group, it was more about putting in place our method and process and technology. And I'll give you an example of the CRIS here. I forgot what it means, but it's a method, of process to treat data, look at the results. And the both here, I put the 2 arrows there. Both here are showing an exchange because sometimes it was not working. Like project management, we had at the department was more a waterfall approach. It was not agile or Scrum approach. Example, more modern method of project management. So we have to adapt the framework ourselves into the framework to make sure we can move on. We are also with the ethics. I just put a couple of elements, but transparency was one of key one here. Explainability was the other element, and ultimately make sure that the model don't have any bias. We have to be inclusive, fundamental and key. Ultimately, we have the famous privacy, so personal information and the data into account. We have also the legal, and possibly the most important element within for people within government is make sure that fairness, general fairness, is followed, strictly followed. That was one of the key here for us to make sure that we were fair in the way we were providing the service or rendering a decision to people. So that's one thing. Ultimately, we're government, so there's a lot of policy and directive from government that we have to follow. One of them, it was a new directive for Government Canada for departments and agencies to follow the directive on automated decision, do an assessment whether or not what kind of automation we were doing. It was very, very important to do it before we can put in place the production environment. The pilot, we have a certain margin to move, but when you go in production, you have to make sure you abide by that. So ultimately, I end up as a director dealing with data on one side, with people at the same time, with the process and the tool. That's not news. This is management. The way it was done, it was very interesting. We need to have a specific AI governance. This is not, for those who are familiar with the AI, this is not new also. It's already a lot of companies, the maturity, having that framework, a lot of consulting firms will provide you with a framework. But the idea here is that governance was built from the bottom up because we went through the process of trying to develop a model and implement that. So we're looking at all the elements we have to integrate, and we put around the bones a lot of meat. That is very important for the team, but what's very important for the department. So ultimately, we have to govern all these elements. This is not a recipe you see in front of you, just a private summary, but most important thing that you have to do with data, people, process, and all the time. This is, and I thank my colleagues from the department, what they developed, and I did with it, was there when we were developing that. So we tried to say, what do we want to do about this governance? What we're looking for. For us, the most important thing is to build trust, which is key and fundamental for us. And how we do that, we want to be effective. We want to achieve our results by the model. We want to be compliant, align ourselves with the regulations and the policies. We have to introduce, and which is new here, to have principled AI, doing the right thing the right way. So all the elements underneath that are all the specific areas that we have a focus on where we work. We look at data quality, data literacy, and model performance and privacy. We'll go through all of that. This is where we have to develop practices, and they were not existent. Data quality, literacy, we can rely on past, but there's some other things that we have to develop specific practice for AI. And they're still working on that in the department, which is very interesting, but that's key and fundamental. You cannot go with that. You cannot go ahead with a project without looking at all these elements. So what we have learned. So I can have a lot of lessons here, and I don't want to bother. I can spend hours on doing that, but we already started late, so I want to finish as soon as possible. So is AI a passing phase? All the management want to have technology. No, it will be there for sure. We see all the benefits here. One of the things we're asked all the time, why are you doing that with your own staff? Why don't you buy the expert company that technology help you to build that? I said, well, it depends. It depends that when you're dealing with your own business process, we came to the conclusion that inside resources is better than anything else because you're in control. And people working with, when you link directly with operation, which is another element, this is skin fundamental. You're not dependent on a system that you buy, on that you hire for that. You can have a modular approach, which is you can buy something, but probably for something less important, a chatbot, a lot of things exist outside, so you don't have to spend money and time on it yourself. But it exists already, so you should not spend there in your time, but you should spend your time on developing something that is close to this process, delivery of your services. Key and fundamental aspect of that is being working hip to hip with the operational people who deliver the service. You're not right there, you won't be successful. And we're lucky to work with on a daily basis. There's a new way of work. One of the slides showed you that, and it will change the work. More than that, it really forced the organization to review its practices, processes, and to standardize the processes. If you don't standardize the processes, your AI won't be efficient as it should be. We have to be govern AI in a systematic fashion to support responsible development of the AI and to reach and become with that. That's why, yes, at the outset, we were looking to optimize the process, to optimize resources. We end up dealing with more than AI per se, more than technology. So this is all for me.